Hello everyone, this is Lolly and you are watching Arx Fatalis Modding Academy. In this video I'll explain a bit about coding and how you can start changing the behavior of objects in Arx, or in other words, do a bit of scripting. This is Lua on the screen, which is a very powerful scripting language, but we will not be using that today as Arx has its own horrendous language for scripting. But before actually diving into doing some code or how to do that, I would like to talk about the general perception of programming. A lot of people think programming is like magic, but in actuality, it's more like creating a cooking recipe. If you have ever cooked from a recipe, then you've executed code similarly to how computers run your exe files or other executable programs. But cooking recipes also allow you to interpret it based on your needs, like add as much salt as you would like or add a bit of butter to the sauce to make it more creamy. But in programming you have to be very specific down to the last detail and expect the computer to behave something like what you can see in Josh Darnett's video, where Josh, the dad, asks his kid to write him exact instructions on how to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich.
Put the butter knife in the peanut butter. Take the butter knife out of the peanut butter.
You did it wrong. No.
Take the butter knife that has the peanut butter on it and spread it all over the top of the piece of bread.
Dad,
That's the top.
I mean the sides.
Take the butter knife, rub it all over the top of the piece of bread.
I quit. You're not making any sense. Sorry, ruined it on purpose. He knows how to make one. I know, Evan. It's the joke. It's the game that we're playing.
And this is exactly your standard experience as a programmer. You tell the computer to do something and it will purposefully sometimes do the exact opposite of what you meant. Bruh. But to look at it from a different perspective, programming is very similar to learning a new language. For example, you have to learn a lot of linguistic concepts before being able to make meaningful sentences, like verbs, nouns, and have to learn the concept of what nouns and verbs are, even though you used it in your own native language. And in programming you will have simpler times because the baseline is really just three concepts: sequences, selection, and loops. Sequences is instructions that happen one after another, do this, then do that, and then do that other thing. Selections is branching off in multiple directions based on some condition. If this happens, then do this, otherwise do that. And loops is just repeating something for an arbitrary amount of times. Similarly to how you need a graphical editor like Photoshop to be able to work with images, you will need the proper tools for editing the script files of Arx Fatalis. This tool is a text editor with the focus on writing code. Notepad will not be enough, and programs like Microsoft Word is a strict no-go in this case, as even the simplest formatting will ruin the script file. I recommend downloading Notepad++ or Visual Studio Code, which is what I'll be using today, but of course there are a lot of alternatives out there that you could use. Before continuing the video, please download and install Visual Studio Code, and also make sure that you have Arx Libertatis installed and use the Arx Unpack program to unpack the contents of the pack files of the game. To see how you can do that, please take a look at the first episode of the Arx Fatalis Modding Academy. The first half of it will cover the basics on how to extract the assets of Arx Fatalis, and afterwards come back to this video and we can continue with looking into the scripts. I have two folders in front of me. The upper one shows the contents of the pack files extracted, and I will highlight them in blue in this video. And the lower one with the green folders is my Arx Libertatis install directory. The simplest way of doing any modifications to the game is just copying something from the extracted contents. At least that should give us a guide on what the folder structure is and where the game is expecting to look for a certain file, and just just paste it here into the Arx installation directory. So for example, in our case, what we are looking for is contents of the graph folder, and within that object 3D, and within that into interactive, and here we have 5 categories of entities, and these contain the scripts of everything that is in Arx, which breathes and moves. Let's say I want to make changes to an NPC, then we have to go into the NPC folder, and then I will get something here like from this Goblin base. I'm just randomly picking this folder from all the other folders here, and then just maybe copy one of these numbered folders and then paste it here in the same folder structure. So I have to create the graph, object 3D, interactive, NPC, Goblin base, and paste the Goblin base code here. And within these numbered folders, you will see an ASL file, which surprisingly does not stand for American Sign Language, but instead Arx scripting language. So these are the text files we need to modify. You can view the contents of this file by opening it with Notepad, and you will see that this contains some text, but make sure to not save it here because you might ruin the encoding, because it looks like it's readable, but it might contain some special characters which would not get saved properly unless using a proper editor like Notepad++ or Visual Studio Code. And to illustrate the issues of not being able to open every file with Notepad is here's the Goblin script, and it looks fairly readable. Everything seems to be okay. And if I go to the script for mice, then my text editor already complains, and we have some special escape characters here like this \A7, \A3, whatever those things are highlighted in red. And if I go to the chainmail helmet, then my text editor completely breaks and it just shows Chinese characters because it thinks that the text inside is in Chinese. I don't want to go into too much details, but please don't worry, Arcane didn't do scripting in Chinese. It's just the text editor incorrectly interpreting the contents of the file and thinking that it has Chinese characters within. It's just a matter of encoding, and we will solve it in Visual Studio Code. I encourage you guys to peek into the different folders within Graph Object 3D Interactive just to see if you spot anything familiar inside. For example, the items will have subfolders like Magic, Movable, Provisions, and just peek inside of them to see what the game calls Provisions, Movable, Magic, or other stuff. And the NPC folder will not have that, and also the Fixinter is similarly just a dump of different entities in the game. So please take a look at these and see if you can spot anything familiar, but you might get daunted by the amount of subfolders and those numbering schemes. Let's see how Arcane would have coded a simple button using their file system and their scripting structure. First of all, what you can see on the left side of this image is the main file, the button folder containing the main button.asl. And next to this main ASL file, you will see folders like button 0001, button 0002, and the numbers seem to go up from 1 to whatever many numbers. You might see gaps, for example, you might see 0003, 0004, and then 0009, and no info on the in-between folders. And within all of these folders, you will see another button.asl not containing the number next to it, so it would be very similar to the main button file. In order to understand why you don't need to worry about the gaps in these foldering numbers and to basically understand what's going on here, I have to give you guys a bit of an example from real life, specifically from architecture. On this image, you will see a floor plan on the left side and some real house image or rendering of that house on the right side. It is exactly the same what we have for the folders here, the main button on the left side of this image is the floor plan of the house, if you will, and the numbered folder button scripts are the instances. So you will not see the button/button.asl, you will only see the numbered versions in the game. And that is why if you go into the game and see the entities with the debug tool, you will see button 0001, 0002 all around you, like entities with these numbers, but not the main one. So we have a main script file which defines the object itself, the entity, and the numbered versions are instances or actual copies of it which is placed inside the world, similarly to how you could make two different houses from the same floor plan, with slight variations of course. You might think to yourself, why is this useful for us in scripting? Why do we need a base entity and then subsequent instances of it or variants of it? To give you an illustration, you might not realize, unless you take a look at the code, that an ylside is just a variant of the base human model. Or similarly, the goblin lord is just a variant of the goblin. So we have a base human class and then we tweak one of the instances to make it look like an ylside. Or we take the base goblin and we tweak it until we get a goblin lord. And as I mentioned, it is not obvious unless you take a look into the code itself. Let's go to Visual Studio Code or VS Code, and what you will see most likely on the left side here when you first open VS Code is this Explorer view, the first icon on the top left hand corner highlighted, and it will probably say to you that no folder is open. So in this case, open folder and go to the extracted pack files folder that you have, and within that navigate to Graph, Object 3D Interactive, and without actually clicking on any of the subsequent folders, click on Open. And now you have all the files here inside VS Code ready to be explored, searched, and maybe modified. But we will copy the contents, what we want to modify, to a different folder later. First of all, we just want to take a look at how you can navigate in VS Code. Let me go into the MPC folder just to illustrate that we don't have a separate ylside class in here, or in this case, an ylside folder. What we have here is instead frog, dog, demon, dragon, ice, like we would have any other type of dragons. Let me just go into human base, and here are the numbered folders like human base 0001, 2, 3, 4. We have a gap, so we don't have 5 that have been probably deleted over time. And if you go all the way to, well, first of all, let's just look at human base 31 just to see what's inside here. Might be a complete mess. And we will get back to these question mark characters because VS Code also struggles with loading this file correctly. So what we have here is, well, nothing interesting here that I want to highlight, but just memorize the layout of what we have here. We have this block that starts with on init. We have this securite, whatever this on top here, and on init, on custom afterwards. Just remember these blocks. Think of blocks here. Identify the blocks of texts and let these guide your vision. And if you scroll all the way down to human base 69, wink wink, then you will see that this one is a very different script. This is indeed an ylside, and it says that it's a human ylside. I don't know how human they are. And again, we have blocks of text here, like we have this on init block, on init end, on reload, and whatever is within here. And frankly, this might be intimidating because it is exactly the same as reading a foreign language that you are not familiar with. Lots of new words. Even though this is English, this does not mean anything to people who first see this. And of course, not to mention these question mark characters. Before getting on to what these blocks are and how to read this file, let me first show you guys how to fix this question mark issue. And also, if you happen to come across a file that is completely Chinese, as I mentioned earlier with the chainmail helmet, then you will also be able to solve that by this trick that I'm about to show now. Go down to the lowest part of VS Code into this blue bar and search for this UTF-8 part. It says select encoding when you hover your mouse mouse over it, click on it with the left mouse button, click on reopen with encoding and select Western and in brackets ISO 885915. And if you click on this, then you will see that, surprise, these turn into paragraph signs, and also other interesting characters will appear. This is very similar to when you get enough skill points in Arx and suddenly a ring will get identified. So the Arx scripts have two special characters which are unique to this very encoding that we have just set. This is this paragraph symbol and then this pound symbol. So these two are the ones that are causing the most issues of when it comes to recognizing the ASL files in any other text editors. So now you know how to fix it. This all looks good, but how did I know that the 69th human entity is the ylside for this presentation? Well, it's no secret. I have to go into Arx Libertatis, enable the debug views, to be more specific the first one, and that will show me the ID of every entity in game, and we can find the corresponding file for it here inside the extracted pack contents. Here I am again on top of the outpost secret wall, and if I enable the debug displays and select the first one, then you will see that close items will get this blue rectangle around them, and also the text above the entities showing their name. For example, we have this little chest 0001. I don't know if we have any other little chests, but we will take a look at the extracted files a bit later. We have the first instance of the diamond here, emerald number 7, ruby number 6, and also in the distance we can see through the wall that we have a seat stool and fork, and a mouse is moving around, specifically the 26th. Let me go over to the tavern, and by the way we have human base number 73 walking by. And standing next to the door, we can see that whoever is standing here has the ID of human base 0069. Let's look at the ID of Tizzy, just for good measures, and Tizzy is 97. And a lot of good folks sitting here with all different entity IDs, so you can see the different scripts for the humans in that human folder if you search for the specific ID. Also, we have this dog here, dog 0010, so the 10th doggo of the game. Don't know if we have 9 more somewhere of the game, hopefully, because he's very cute. Looking at any of the script files, you will see that we have these blocks of code here. As I mentioned, we have this on init block of code, at least that is how it starts, and then we have this on init and on reload. So what you can do is keep an eye out for these curly brackets, this opening and closing one. Those will enclose what we call in programming blocks. And so this is an on init and block, and here this is an on reload block, and this is one self-contained block, and this on init and is also a self-contained block. Even though we identified blocks of text here, we still don't know what is inside here. And to help us understand what things are happening here, what is set event, for example, or set controlled zone is, we need to take a look at the Arx Libertatis wiki, and it has a ton of information on scripting because Daniel, the main developer of Arx Libertatis, is doing a very good job in upgrading this. And I think this is the main reason that we don't see that much progress in code, because he is indeed doing this documentation process and it is very exhausting if you ask me. So what is the Arx scripting language? It's essentially 3 things, at least that is what you will come across most of the time. You will see events. You can see a familiar piece of text here. We have this on event name and the brackets, and also we have some extra info here that it should end in accept or refuse. We'll get back to that later. And we have comments, and if you go down here to the list section, then you will see all the comments here, which is very useful because this is the same things that you can type into your console while you are in game. And we have interesting stuff like nope, which does exactly nothing. And also we have Quake here, and don't worry, this does not launch the game Quake in Arx Fatalis, but rather shake the camera to simulate an earthquake. So just take a look at all of the things that are available here and written here in the third column of this table, and just see what the corresponding comment to it is here. And if you scroll down to the end of the page, then you will see that we have a list of comments here, which are not being used or no longer doing anything. They will not do any harm, but they will just not do anything. They are for historical reasons and to not break older scripts, as the wiki states. And the third one, which is, in my opinion, the most important part of any programming, is the state. And I couldn't find any other good images to describe state. To describe what state is, think of the light bulb. It can be in any time either on or off, or it can emit light or not emit light. And that property of being turned on or not being turned on is a state. It can be changed over time, and that is the most difficult part in programming because you need to plan ahead. You need to make sure to run the correct commands in the future based on the current state of an entity at any given time. So for example, if a goblin is sitting on a chair, then don't instruct him to start running until he stands up, because it would look weird. Let's go back to the events for a second, because if you scroll down here, then similarly to what we had with the comments, you will see a list describing the different events of the game. Sadly, this list is incomplete because, for example, we don't have a description for the init end and for the init, but it can give you a good explanation to all the other ones that are described here. For example, we have an on ouch, which is sent when the entity is damaged. And in this case, entity is everything that has a script. NPC, the fixinters, the items, and such stuff. To jump between topics a bit, I want to mention the difference between the different interactive items of the game. Fixinters are the ones that are not movable in the game. For example, like a door, and it can rotate, but you cannot move it, you cannot put it in your inventory. We categorize the stuff that you can put into your pocket as well as the items that can be dragged around, both of them into the items. So a bread and a stool is both items. And then we have the NPCs, which are the goblins, enemies, the other creatures of the game. We have the player, which has his own folder. And if you look in here, then you will see that we have just two script files here. You can safely ignore the g.asl. I know Amshigar is a G, but you have to work with player.asl if you want to change his behavior. And finally, we have this system folder, which contains the camera and something which is called a marker. A marker is like the simplest version of an entity. It's like a blank canvas and you can make everything out of a marker, and it is mostly used for highlighting locations. That is also a marker, and if you look at the levels of Arx, then you will see a lot of markers. Those are points of interest where an NPC can run to or something spawns there. It's marking a location on the map, but we can also use it extensively to make something cool with it. If you scroll a bit down on this page or click on the variables link in the table of contents, then you will jump to this section in this page, which describes the variables of the Arx scripts, but it doesn't really tell you what variables are in the first place. If you remember the math classes, we had these horrendous expressions, and x and y and other symbols which were not numbers were variables. And those variables could contain numbers with different types, like we had integers, rational numbers, real numbers, etc. But programming takes this to the next level, as different variables could not just hold numbers, but other things like text, and some programming languages you could store images and other binary data. So let me show another way of symbolizing variables in programming, which is more common than the X and Y symbols from math, and those are the boxes. And you can put stuff inside these boxes, and the stuff could change over time. For example, you can put here 35 and true, and you can also put in the text Bob inside. And if you can modify it, meaning you can replace the contents of the box, then it is called a variable. If you cannot modify it, then it is called a constant. Also, boxes will have names because you want to know what is inside them. We have this dishes box here on the right, but we don't really know how many dishes there are inside, but we know that it contains dishes. So that is the dishes variable. And so when we are working with these boxes, we just move around the box with its contents, and we only pick out the contents of it when it is needed. And so we don't grab each and every dish from that dishes box and hand it over to the next person to carry it over one by one, but instead we grab the whole box, hand it to the person, and that person will carry over all the dishes. In Arx, we don't have dishes in variables, but we have what is mentioned here in this type column. We have int, which stands for integer. Remember it from this. This is the integers. And then we have number, which is every type of number. We don't specify that it is real numbers, but instead it's just called number. And then we have string, which was the Bob in this prior example. So remember these, we have boxes with names and some content in it, and the content can change over time, and we have to prepare the code in a way that it can handle whatever the contents of the boxes are. And to go back to this image for a second, our code would have to deal with these boxes in a way that if it would open the dishes box and it would contain 2 plates, then that would also not cause any issues, but if it would contain 17 dishes, then it would also have to be handled without any issues. So that is programming in a nutshell, specifically the variables part. Going back to this image with the blueprint and the numbered instances, when you are opening these files, always look for the onInit block and the onInitEnd block, because those will get executed first. So the order of how to read the lines one after another, going from one block to another, goes like this. First, you should look for the onInit in the main file, read all the lines one by one, and then go to the instance of it, the numbered one, and read the onInit there. Afterwards, go back to the main file and go back to the onInitEnd, and then you can go once more back to the numbered instance and read the onInitEnd from it. I encourage you guys to look through the map with the debug view, find simple items like mushrooms, search for them in the code base, and just try to find the onInit and onInitEnd blocks within those files. Now that I mention it, let's see what we can find when we start a new game in the prison cell. I'm gonna start a new game. And while you guys are still trying to find yourselves in the folders of the script files, I highly encourage you to make a quick save here, because you will most probably go in and out from the game, and so you don't have to wait for the game to load. Here I am inside the prison cell, and if I enable the first debug display again, then you can see that we have a good couple of entities here. What I'm interested here is that we have this food mushroom 10 and 9 instances. So if you want to make any modifications for the mushroom in this prison cell, then you have to look for food mushroom 0010 and 0009. Also, if you want to make any modifications to this skull, then look for skull 0013. I'm back in vscode, and I will show you guys how to quickly find this skull that we have just looked at. Hold down Ctrl and P, or Command P if you are on Mac, and start typing skull underscore character 0013 13, and it will highlight you this file. This finder will probably do a good job in finding the necessary script file for you. I'm gonna click on it, and just to be sure, I'm gonna change the encoding. All right. And as you can see, since we have opened every file by opening the interactive folder, it already highlights on the left side in the Explorer view where our file is. This is very useful because you can see that for the skull, we basically have nothing here. We have no onInit or onInitEnd, which doesn't mean that it doesn't initialize something in the background. What it means is that it is perfectly fine with inheriting what is written here in the main file, and it doesn't want to extend anything in it. In this case, I want to search one folder up in this structure and look at this skull.asl. Okay, the file is not displayed in the text editor because it is either binary or uses an unsupported text encoding. It is exactly the same issue that we had with the Chinese characters. Open anyway, text editor, and you can see that it has this weird character at the end, or it might be the Chinese character. Again, you have to do this sadly every time for every file. Reopen with encoding, Western ISO 8859-15. Well, at least we have this null here. Well, I'm just gonna ignore this. So we have this onInit block here, and let's just look what is happening here. So when the game starts, it will run this piece of code line by line. So it will first look at this, and then it will run this line, this line. If you see something that starts with double forward slashes, then this is a comment. This line will get ignored. And then we have this set wait 1, and then finally we have this accept. Let's go back to the Arx Libertatis wiki with the events page. One block of event looks like on, and then the event name. In this case, event name was init for us. We have this code block, and then it will end in either an accept or a refuse. And if you go back to the commands wiki, then we can look at what set name is, set material is, set shadow is, etc. To make our lives a bit easier, we can add color to this block of gray text so that we can have different colors for different meanings of code. To do this, search for this CRLF again, but instead of going left, like we did for setting up the encoding, we need to go right, click on whatever you have here. For me, now this says it's binary. I'm gonna click this and scroll all the way down till I see Java. The Arx scripting language is not defined in Visual Studio Code. It doesn't know how to color it properly. And as far as I know, based on my testings, Java seems to add the best colorings. And as you can see, we have the comment part, the thing that can be removed and would not change the code in any ways, in this dark green color. Afterwards, you can check what set name is. Let's go to the commands and search for set name. Here it is. Set the display name. The display name is what you see when you move your mouse cursor over the object. Then we have set material, should be somewhere near, yeah, above that. Set the collision sound material. So if you bump in it or throw it, then if it has glass, then it will emit glass sounds. If you set it to stone, then it will have stone sounds. And you can check out all of the comments here. Interestingly, we have this set throw damage. It seems to be not used in any of the scripts. Let's see if it is here. If I scroll down here, then I don't seem to find it. Let me just search for it. Throw, no results, not even in the unused, no longer used command section here. So this is probably a command that is no longer used. And it is interesting because it allows you to speculate what set throw damage might have been if it had been implemented. Maybe if I would have thrown this skull back then to the goblin, it might have harmed him 1 point of damage. Okay, this is all very good. What can we do with these script files? Let me go back to this split view where I have the extracted pack file contents on the top half and the Arx installation directory in the lower part, and let me search for the skull and let's do something with it. First of all, let me find the skull, and if you look at the line below the file name, then it will give you the path specifically relative to this interactive folder. Items, movable, and then let's search for skull. And the other one that I left open is skull 0013, so that is what we need to deal with. And you will see this funky question mark symbol, which is used for items that don't have icons for the inventory. If this could be placed in the inventory, then this would be the icon for it. Okay, so we have skull number 13. And let me recreate the folder structure in this Arx Libertatis installation directory. Casing doesn't matter, you can type everything in lowercase. Arx Fatalis and Arx Libertatis will handle it correctly. So graph, object 3D, interactive, movable. Of course I skipped the items, so let me place that. And then put the movable within that, skull 0013. And let me copy whatever is here and paste it in the Arx installation directory. If we modify something in this original file, in this file that we already have opened here, then it will not modify the contents in the game. So what we need to do is go to the file that we copied over and just drag it here. And if you drag it to the right side, then you can have what is called a split view, and I can hide this explorer or toggle it on the left side. So what we have now is this very nice clean view. On the left side we have the original file, and on the right side we have the file to be modified in the Arx installation directory. Just to be sure, I'm going to again change UTF-8 to Western ISO 885915. That has to be set every time, sadly. And also plain text, I'm going to change that to Java. Very nice. One thing you can try as your first experiment is changing the scale of the object. As you can see, we don't have an onInit here in this file. So in order to change the scale, we have to create our own onInit block. And also I'm going to place an accept here. Don't forget that part. And now we have an empty init block. If you have already an onInit, then just put some empty lines before the accept and try typing your stuff in there. I'm gonna type in set scale, and 100 is the default value. That is a percentage, 100%. And let's change that to 300. That should be 3 times the size. Let's go back to the game, start a new quest, and let's see if anything changes. In this case, I have to start a new quest. Otherwise onInit will not run. Moment of truth. Oh, hello there. Well done, we did a bit of scripting. So you can change a good couple of the properties of items just by messing around with simple commands in the onInit block. And you can do the same with mushrooms. Let's change the size of mushroom number 10. I'm back in vscode and I'm gonna search for mushroom 10. I'm going to use the same trick. Actually, I'm going to close all of this junk here. Control P, mushroom, and 0010. We have an interesting situation with the food mushroom over here, because the instance script does not exist, which means that whatever is happening for every mushroom out there, like the 9th or the 10th one, which is in the prison cell, is perfectly fine with the blueprints that it got from the main food mushroom.asl. Let me try to open it. Okay, setting the encoding and setting the syntax highlighting to Java. Very nice. This is the script of a mushroom, and the instances don't differ from the main one in any way. In this case, if we modify this file instead of having a mushroom 0010 folder or food mushroom 0010 folder, then we will scale every mushroom in the game. And I think that is going to give us an interesting situation here. I'm going to copy this this file and see if I can modify the scale to it. This has a bit of an interesting code here. We are going to remove this and simplify it with our own code. And if you read the top part of this commands wiki, then you will see that Arx scripting language is a bit versatile because you can type set scale or set underscore scale or set very many underscores scale. It doesn't matter, it will all be the same and Arx will handle it. I went back all the way to the interactive folders in both folder, and let's go to items, also here, and we need a provisions folder, and within that we need a folder called mushroom. And interestingly, the file name doesn't match the folder name. We have food mushroom, but the folder name was mushroom. And you will see that in a couple of instances, so don't be worried about it. Just look at how it is called in game. So in this case, we have food mushroom, and that is what we need to work with. I'm gonna copy this over. Let me again drag the food mushroom to the right side of vscode here. And I'm going to skip explaining this weird math part here in this video because this is already getting way too long. Feel free to just remove parts of the code, experiment with it, and see if you can make it work to your liking. And by that I mean that I'm going to remove the scale part. This is a variable. Remember this funky paragraph symbol. I'm going to remove this, and instead of a variable that we have here, I'm going to type in a constant number. So let's say 500. It's going to be a very, very large mushroom. Let's jump into the game, again start a new quest and see how it looks. Okay, fresh new game. Very nice, lovely, juicy, oversized mushrooms. I could kill a rat with this. I want to show you guys that if you load a previous save file, then the scaling code will not run because, as I mentioned, on init and on init end will only run once when you start a new game or when you first load this object. For example, when you change a level, and that is the first time that the mushroom gets loaded, then it will get the new scale. Let me illustrate that by jumping to a different level that have not been loaded in this save file yet. And there should be some larger mushrooms here. Don't mind if I take this lovely juicy carrot. So the mushrooms on this level loaded or initialized after we have created our script or added our scripts. So the scale script that we added are applied to this now, but not for the goblin cell, prison cell that we had when I loaded the game. I'm going to end the video here because it is getting very, very long, but I'm going to encourage you guys to experiment a bit because you cannot really destroy anything with this. If you have problems, for example, with the mushroom script that you created, that it will not execute, it will not run, it will default back to the contents within the pack files. But if you have a successful script and you want to remove it, then just delete the file from the graph folder that you created and you are back to the original script. Also, a little homework for you all. Try copying a couple of items that you come around, and if you find anything that can be copied, try changing the material, like we have this set material. Try searching other files to see what types of materials are there. For example, we saw for the skull that you can type in stone, and then it will emit a different sound. Also, try using this set price to set an absurdly high price for it. Let's change the price of a mushroom to 8,000, and now if you sell it to Maria, then you will get 8,000 pieces of gold, or a slightly less amount based on your stats. So experiment with a couple of these set commands, open a couple of different entities or their scripts that you come across on your map, see how they are scripted, see if you can spot anything that is readable to you, like this set price. Try to find them here in the list of commands and see if you can change it. Experiment and try to break the game and see if you can make something interesting. And if you are done with scripting and you want to share it with everyone, then just go back to your Arx installation directory, get the graph folder, zip it up, share it by uploading it to ModDB or any of the Arx Discord servers, and I'm fairly sure that everyone will be interested because there are not many mods out there. Make giant mushrooms, make plants that are very expensive when you sell it, change the rune arm to be very cheap, and small stuff like that. And you can do a lot of things without actually diving very deep into programming. So be brave, experiment with stuff, share it with us, ask questions if you want to, and I will see you in the next Modding Academy episode where we will dive into more complex programming topics. Bye for now, see you next time.